How much do you know about the Giants-Dodgers rivalry? You know, before the late 40s, before the Boys of Summer? I stumbled across this one while I was doing research on something else, and I felt like I kind of had to tell somebody about it. The thing is, we forget about the New York Giants, Brooklyn Dodgers, or in this case, I suppose, Brooklyn Robins rivalry. It was pretty tight going all the way back before even the beginning of the American League to the 19th century. One year that we forget a lot about is in 1924. Now, if you go look that one up, you'll see that the Giants won the pennant that year by 1.5 games over Brooklyn. And I'll tell you, there was one game that really stands out. This was on September 7th, 1924, and the hype around this game was absolutely huge. The Giants went into Brooklyn with a half-game lead over the Brooklyn Dodgers, or Robins, whichever you want to call them. Brooklyn had won 82, lost 55. The Giants won only 81, but had lost 53. We tend to forget about the 1924 Brooklyn Robins and their incredible comeback. They had been as many as 13 games behind the Giants at one point in August. But after rattling off 15 straight victories, a streak that ended right before this game, the Robins were on a tear for first place. There were a huge contingent of fans who wanted to attend that one. Ebbets Field at the time, according to the newspapers, sat about 31,000. There were as many as 50,000 people who tried to attend this game. Fans poured out into the stadium and even onto the field. The few police officers who were in attendance eventually gave up and relented. There was an estimate in the Brooklyn newspapers that the standing crowd was around 7,000 people. Now, the Brooklyn Ball Club had requested police protection, but wound up only getting about 20 to 30 officers. There were comments in at least one of the newspapers about how this may have been for political reasons. There was a 13-year-old boy from Brooklyn who fell as he tried to scale a wall. They estimate the fall at about 12 feet, and he was carried off to the hospital. I wasn't able to find out what happened to him in the end. Now, the game itself was definitely worth the price of admission, or the free admission for those who crashed the game. There were a number of really strange plays and completely bizarre things that happened, and I'll tell you about one that stands out that you kind of lose in the box score. It was in the third inning of the ball game, top of the third inning, and Hack Wilson came up with runners on first and second. You remember Hack Wilson, right? We've talked about him before. Wilson came up and hit a fly ball over to left field that looked like a sure hit. Zack Wheat, the famous Brooklyn player, ran over and made a spectacular catch. There was only one out. Wheat made the catch. The runners at first advanced, thinking that the ball was going to fall in. When they saw Zack make the catch and dive out for it, they returned to their bags and then advanced again. Ross Young, who was on second base, ended up scoring on the sacrifice fly. And the runner on first base, Bill Terry, returned to first base and stayed there. Now, the throw originally went from the left fielder Wheat to the catcher. The catcher caught the ball and tried to tag the runner out, but he was called safe. The catcher returned the ball to the pitcher, Burleigh Grimes. You'll remember him, the old spitballer. Burleigh Grimes got the ball and walked over and touched first base, where Terry was called out. Now, the reason why Bill Terry was called out, despite the fact that he did tag up, was because he had touched second base before the runner at second base had tagged up, at least from what I can tell from the New York Times article. I'm not 100% sure on the ruling behind that play, but when you go on to Baseball Reference and you look this up, you see a very, very rare double play that went 7-2-1-6. So I suppose they threw to the shortstop who was at first base at some point in time. So go figure that one out. This was a real close game up until the top of the 8th inning. It was a 3-3 tie at that time, but the Giants got 3 straight singles with one out. Ross Youngs hit a ground ball then to shortstop Johnny Mitchell of Brooklyn. Mitchell threw the ball away, which allowed a run to score. Now, Burleigh then struck out George Kelly. but then he gave up a double to Bill Terry. He walked Hack Wilson and then a single to Travis Jackson and allowed 5 runs in that inning before it was all over. But that wasn't it. Brooklyn came back with 1 in the bottom of the 8th. And then scored 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning and were threatening with runners on at 2nd and 3rd and 2 men out. And Dutch Ruther, a pitcher, came in to pinch hit. And struck out, ending this one. The Giants won the ballgame 8-7. Among the bizarre and among the really strange things about this game that we forget about is Burleigh Grimes, the old spitballer, who pitched all 9 innings for Brooklyn, giving up 17 hits. He gave up 8 runs on 17 hits, walked 6, and struck out 4. I don't know how many pitches he threw, but it must have been an awful lot. (1924) wasn't really that long ago. I mean, it's before World War II, after World War I, 100 years ago. But man, oh man, how the game has changed, because today you would never see anybody up there giving up 17 hits and 8 runs in a complete game loss. And so there you have it. That's one to remember, as the Giants beat the Dodgers 8-7 in what was probably the most exciting game in the regular season in 1924.